got her! And I'm taking her home!
News of the World was directed by Paul Greengrass and stars Tom Hanks and tells the story of a Civil War captain who now goes from town to town throughout Texas, reading the news of major cities around the world. One day he runs into a young girl who was captured by Native Americans when she was young and now has to take her to her last remaining family member she has. From that brief synopsis, you'd believe this is going to be another Logan or The Last of Us. And it's not. It's not a bad film, but not a great one either. Now, before you jump to conclusions, I don't think this is a bad film. Many critics and audiences seem to like it, and that's great. But for me, it was lacking a lot of what a story like this needed to be a really great film. First, let's get the positives out of the way. Tom Hanks is great as he always is, and he really helps carry the film. Helena Zengel, who plays Johanna, gives a fantastic performance, and her chemistry with Hanks as well as her balance of speaking multiple languages makes the film that much better. The cinematography is beautiful, utilizing natural lighting as much as possible. The film doesn't feel like other westerns and has a much more nuanced and calmer feeling to it. For the very few scenes of either intense action or scenario, they're very well done, and because of how good our two leads are together, it made me hope that they would survive. Now it's time to get into some of the problems I have with the film. When the trailer first came out, I really thought this was going to be another Logan or The Last of Us, where it tells a story about an older man who's lost his humanity and he begins to find it again while aiding a daughter-like figure through a treacherous world. It seemed like it was going to be exactly that, and while there's elements of that here and there, it never feels like Hanks' character is going on any major journey. He may have lost someone close a while ago, but aside from that, we don't learn much of anything about him until about the last 10 minutes, and by then it's too late. If his character was going on more of a journey of self-discovery and we learned more about him on said journey, this could have been an incredibly effective and emotional story. But sadly, it never quite gets there. Another issue I have with the film is that it takes place not too long after the Civil War, and it's clear it wants to have some kind of commentary about the state of Texas and the US during that time, but it has no idea what it wants to say. There's some really interesting ideas sprinkled throughout the film, but as a whole, there's no real themes explored about the state of the US during the time, and there's no real variety in the places they visit. If each town they crossed through was different and varied in some way, i.e. a town of immigrants that don't speak English, a deserted town, a town that found ways to exploit slavery despite it being outlawed. It could have been an incredibly interesting way to explore what the Civil War had done to the state and really made the film stand out, but aside from one town, most are pretty forgettable and have nothing special about them. Often in film and TV, the time period explored in a lot of westerns are either pre-Civil War or Civil War, but post-Civil War is something that's not explored as often as we realized. If Greengrass had explored some interesting concepts about this time period, then the audience could have gotten more pulled into the world aside from just being another western setting. For a movie about traveling a great distance, going through treacherous terrains and people, there's very little dangers encountered throughout the film. They're never attacked by wild animals, there's no real threats from nature aside from one towards the end, and even that's not that bad, and they're only attacked by bad people once. The appeal in a lot of cases for movies like this, especially set during the Old West, is the odds are against our characters, and it's an incredibly tough journey for them to survive. Films like The Revenant are so appealing because we see the horrifying journey DiCaprio goes through, and by the end we want him to get to safety and get his revenge. But here, I didn't feel worried about the characters for most of the movie. Imagine if Johanna taught Hank's survival and hunting skills from her time with the Native Americans, and Hank taught her how to read and use sign language so she can communicate with him. It would have not only built up their relationship, but it would have gotten us to care more about their survival. Also, there's a surprising lack of interesting side characters. Usually in stories like these, there's interesting people our protagonists run into on their journey, both good and bad, and it makes the world feel more alive and lived in. But here, there's hardly any at all, again adding to the emptiness of this world. The film was only 2 hours, so Greengrass could have added a lot more in terms of world building when it comes to its characters, locations, and danger. I know it sounds like I have a lot of negative things to say about this movie, but I'm making a lot more complaints than usual because not only have we seen this type of story done many times before, but there are better ways to tell it out there. Again, Logan, The Last of Us, and many other properties have told similar stories to this, and even movies like The Revenant have done the survival and world building aspects better. I'm happy that a lot of critics and audiences are enjoying it, and I can see why, but I was expecting more, and what I got was just okay, made only a bit better by our leads. If you're looking for a western with likable leads that isn't going to surprise or challenge you a lot, then you'll enjoy this. It's not for me, but I can see why people like it. I'm going to give News of the World a 6 out of 10. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this review. I know there was a lot more negative like aspects of looking throughout the movie than there were a lot of positives, but that's just really kind of how I felt about this movie in general. I had a lot higher expectations, and they were just kind of like not really met. And like, I can see why people liked it. It's not that hard to see why, but for me, I've just seen this kind of story done many times before, and just done in a lot better ways. I think that, like my review said, if it had those changes in aspects, longer running time, and other things like that, this could have really stood out amongst those. And this is based off a book. I have no idea what the book is like. I don't know how different it is, but it's just, it wasn't for me. If it is for you, then that's great. I'm happy that you liked it. I'm happy that you enjoyed it. If you still want to check it out, that's great as well. But I just want and expect more, especially from Tom Hanks and Paul Greengrass. But it was fine. So yeah, make sure to like, share, subscribe, all that cool stuff. Check out everything else I've done, all the other movie reviews, video essays, and other stuff, and I will see you all next time.